Alright, this week when looking back on the recordings I have for the brutality I want to highlight, all I can say is getting that brutality was a bit of a journey. But we will get to that in just a moment. Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I call Thor's Entertainment. I'm Thor. And I am again going to be highlighting a brutality for what I call Fatal Friday. This brutality is going to be for the DLC character Homelander in Mortal Kombat 1. And I go into the Kombat League trying to get that brutality against somebody else. Anyway, I was saying that this was a journey to get, and yeah, it was a little bit of a task whenever trying to get the Exam Brutality for Homelander. That is the brutality version of his airborne choke that he can do to his opponent whenever doing the diabolical dash. Now really this is not a hard brutality to get, but for some reason I was having a bit of difficulty getting it, not because of anything that I was really doing, but more so my opponents. I guess you could say we were having a little bit of a participation issue. And for that reason, it took me a few matches to get this brutality, and we are going to be taking a brief look at each of them. The very first fight when I was trying to get this brutality had me matched up against somebody using Johnny Cage. Now since I have a few different fights to highlight here, I'm going to jump ahead a good amount because I eventually end up on set point where the very next win I get ends up winning me the entire set. And I had a really good life lead against Johnny Cage, so winning seemed very likely, but I found myself with a bit of an issue. I suddenly could not remember the button inputs for that brutality. So I was trying to really quickly go into the menu and look at that so I could execute the brutality because Johnny Cage was throwing out some pretty unsafe stuff towards the very end, getting a bit desperate to try and beat the clock, which was about at 10 seconds around the time I was looking at the menu. So I was hoping to see the button inputs, get out of the menu, and then block something unsafe like maybe the shadow kick, or maybe the fatal blow if he ends up trying to throw that out there again. And then I could do a full combo into the diabolical dash, knock Johnny Cage into the air, and get that brutality. Well, I wasted a little bit too much time doing that. By the time I returned to the fight, Johnny Cage was over trying to catch up to me after I had that big life lead, and with the clock winding down, he figured, well, there's no reason to waste any more time on this set, and he quitalities. So my hopes that he would do something unsafe at the very last moment and I'd be able to punish it and go into that brutality, well, that did not happen. Even so, the opportunity was there, so I figured it won't be too long before I get that brutality, right? Well, let's fast forward a little bit. The very next match I had in the Kombat League was against somebody using Natara. And I was getting pretty excited for the matchup. Natara is mostly an airborne character, Homelander has a bunch of airborne stuff as well. I thought maybe we were going to find ourselves with a really cool aerial combat scenario, but no. As soon as the announcer says fight, Natara says nah, snaps her own neck, and it's another quittality immediately after the other one. So back-to-back quitalities have cost me the opportunity of getting my brutality, and after that I was on to a third Kombat League set. This time around I ended up getting randomly paired up against somebody using Quan Chi. And it was already an improvement over the previous set because we at least completed one match. Quan Chi ended up beating me and getting the Happy Feet brutality, and then suddenly the connection just completely fell apart. You can kind of see it happening in the background right now. Things were loading like we were on a dial-up internet connection, and eventually we got disconnected from each other. So not quite a quittality, but still, it was an abrupt end to the match, so we have 2 quitalities and 1 disconnect. And all of this was back to back to back. And at this point I was like, I don't care how the next set goes, as long as the person stays in the fight and I get that brutality, I'm going to be happy with it, and I'm going to go ahead and make that the video. Which brings me to the very next set, which is the one where I finally got that brutality. For the 4th set in this video, I ended up getting randomly paired up against somebody using Peacemaker. And the first thing that stood out to me was the very low level of this person and the very few fights that they had been in. It was very likely that I was going to be fighting against somebody who was playing this game for basically the very first time. That is not ideal, I'd love for it to be a little bit more competitive than that, but you saw how the previous matches went. I was going to take whatever I could get to get this brutality. Besides, I'm making a lot of assumptions here. All because they're kind of new to the game doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be bad at it. After all, some people have surprised me before having low levels and very few matches, and they ended up being pretty good. Maybe this is going to be one of those scenarios.
Aquaman, the deep? What's with all these fish fuckers?
Tell me about it.
Suck on that!
Take 1. Action!
So okay, that journey is finally over, and now we are on to the actual set against Peacemaker that I wanted to highlight in this video. So thank you for sticking around through all of that. And it almost immediately starts off with the combo that I want to do for the brutality because it ends with the exact same attack that I need to do. The thing is, as you may recall back in the Johnny Cage fight, I was having some trouble remembering what exactly the buttons were for that brutality. And what I should have done after having that problem was quit for a moment, go back into the practice mode, and then check that out. I did not do that. So I still found myself occasionally trying to look at the moves list and remember what exactly those buttons were. And it got to the point where in this very first match, I kind of just said, screw it, I'm not going to go for the eye exam brutality, I'm just going to go for something else. Not to worry though, I do circle back around to the eye exam brutality by the end of the video, but in this very first match, it stopped being my priority. I was going to try and get something different like the what happens if brutality, which is when you do the ear slap, or I was going to do the shh brutality, which is whenever you do the meter burn version of the parry. So basically we're going to see me get into scenarios where I have a really big life lead, and then I just kind of screw around for a while trying to get various brutalities. And even though I was trying to get the eye exam brutality and I suddenly found myself just willing to get any brutality I could, I really wanted to get that shh brutality because that one was a little bit tricky. Because you had to have meter to pull off that brutality, and not every single attack that the opponent does can be parried with that anyway. So of the other brutalities that I still needed to get, that was probably the hardest one, so if I could get it here I would have been pretty happy. Unfortunately that does not happen, and I actually end up settling for the what happens if ear slap brutality. So we end up getting a bonus brutality in this video, and after this match, I go back to prioritizing trying to get the eye exam brutality as well.
Brutality. Homelander wins.
There was the bonus what happens if brutality for Homelander, and we also now have a cameo switch for Peacemaker. Switching away from Kano, he's now going to Frost. And now on to the next match and trying to get the eye exam brutality. So now that we've had a moment to see how the match is going in the background, we get to see whether or not that optimism I had that maybe even though this person doesn't have like the highest level or maybe the most experience in the game, maybe they could still be pretty good. Maybe the set could still be competitive. And as time began to progress, that felt less and less likely. I progressively found myself with pretty good life leads in this set, which is great considering I was still trying to remember those buttons and still look at the menu from time to time. That's a lot easier to do when you can take some hits. Eventually I started to kind of notice an issue. And it really wasn't that bad in the very first match, but by the time we get to the second match, it becomes a lot more obvious. The connection for this fight was terrible. Like there was just a bunch of lag whenever fighting against this person using Peacemaker, and it was making doing certain combos just really difficult, like the inputs just were not happening. Granted, that was not really holding me back a whole lot, I was still landing a good amount of stuff, but it was a bit more tricky. And considering we were now 4 different Kombat League sets into trying to get this brutality, 2 of them were Quitalities, 1 of them was just a really bad connection that led to a disconnect with Quan Chi, and now this one's also not the greatest connection either. I was at the point of saying, okay, regardless of what happens in this fight, I think I'm just going to take a break for a little while, because these sets in the Kombat League were not really going the way that I wanted them to. Fortunately though, with this being the final set that I was going to do before taking a break, it ends up paying off, because in the second match, I finally remember what the button inputs are for the eye exam brutality. And the opportunity does present itself to get that full combo I was talking about earlier that ends in the brutality. And in case you were curious, you and your opponent have to be airborne, you have to do back forward 2 to do the diabolical dash, you have to hit 2 again, which initiates the choke, and as that attack is happening, you have to hold down the 3 button. If you do that, it should activate the eye exam brutality, assuming that all the health is depleted for your opponent.
No! Brutality. Homelander wins.
It may have taken a while, but I was able to pull off the entire combo and cap it off at the very end with the eye exam brutality for Homelander. And yeah. It may have taken 2 Quitalities and 2 blatantly bad internet connections, but we were able to pull it off in the end. And after getting it, I did consider for a moment whether or not I should continue looking for more matches in the Kombat League and go for one that just had a better connection and may have looked a little bit nicer. But after giving it that consideration, I decided I was going to go ahead and move forward with the 4 videos that I had. Mostly because getting these matches back to back to back to back, It was really unlikely. I just kind of found it funny how I kept getting the quitalities and the bad connections and everything was just kind of going wrong, but still somehow in the very end I was able to get that brutality. And I don't know, something about that just sounded like it was going to make a better story for one of these videos than me getting that brutality in a situation where everything went according to plan. So hopefully you enjoyed this little journey that we went down to see that brutality. And I'll be sure to show the brutality one more time at the very end of the outro. That way we can enjoy it one final time before we part ways on this Fatal Friday. And if you happen to enjoy this video, feel free to check out the other things I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I do have other Mortal Kombat 1 finisher videos just like this. Those can be found under the Fatal Friday playlists. And I have stuff for other video games as well, like playthroughs of the remakes of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to have a playthrough video up in the near future for Endling Extinction is Forever. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to check it out. No matter what though, thank you for checking out this video for this long. Take care and hopefully I will see you next time.
Brutality. Homelander wins.